Okay, today's topic is Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. And they are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. Now let's see one by one. First one is Yama, which comprises of 5 virtues, and they are Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. We'll see one by one. Now let's see what is Ahimsa. It is abstaining from harming others and also not harming any being by word, deed or thought, and friendly nature towards happy people, and showing pity towards unhappy people, an ideal of non-violence. Even ferocious animal become calm in his presence. Okay, now Yama are mainly qualities that the spiritual aspirant should have in order to communicate and interact with the outside world and the people in it. They are also self-restrainment from performing actions of the weaker lower mind. Ahimsa, whatever I said, is non-violence. Not only means not causing harm or pain to any creature in thought, word or action, but also not having even a hint of aggression within your being. Usually our actions in themselves are violent, though our purposes are not at all so. When a mother slaps a child, she does so because she wants to teach the child a lesson. It is done out of love, not hatred. Therefore, it is a purpose that matters and not the action. It is equally sinful if we encourage others to be violent or if we are violent of ourselves. Himsa means violence is not only physical violence but also includes manipulation, hurting someone's feelings, psychic influence and so on. The most important thing is not to directly deny people even if they get violent. That is, not getting into fights, arguments, disputes, quarrels. Himsa means violence is not considered to be violence if it is to save your life or if you kill one in order to save many. It is said that when you perfect ahimsa, means non-violence, a sort of magnet will act around you, okay, a good aura, preventing anyone from doing you harm or being violent. People will start to enjoy your presence and feel no discomfort as long as they are in your presence. That is called positive vibes. Now let's see about Satya. It's the value of truthfulness. A lie is not only a lie if you speak incorrect or dishonest words. If you acted foolishly and afterwards blinded yourself with the belief that you did the right thing, it is also considered to be a lie. Even although it all happened in your mind, it's the same if you exaggerate or brag it in order to boost your ego. Satya is not merely abstinence from telling lies, but also the ability to see the truth, to be aware of the truth behind everything. If you tell people what they should or should not do and then do whatever pleases you, you are a hypocrite. You say one thing and do another, thereby not being true even to yourself. Why should one lie? One lies to escape the consequences of the actions of oneself or one's associate. This is a manifestation of the petty mind. Therefore, Satya also helps in overcoming the petty mind. Next is Asteya. It is abstaining from appropriating things not sanctioned by Shastras. Means not to steal. The meaning is not to steal. Asteya, it is a third yama, is commonly known as honesty in the sense of abstinence from theft, means not stealing. To be able to follow Asteya, we must be satisfied with what we have. Our personal belongings, our way of thinking, what we do, where we are, who we are, etc. In other words, we must not be greedy and should not try to be contented. We steal things because we desire them. To be able or to be strong enough to resist the temptation to steal the object that one desires, one's mind must be strong. Hence, through mastering asteya, one purifies mind of desires and vrittis. And what is brahmacharya? It is a celibacy, continence in thought, word and deed. Brahmacharya is usually depicted in books, discourses, scriptures, etc. as celibacy. But Brahma literally means the divine consciousness, and Charya in this case means living or one who is established in. Therefore, Brahmacharya actually means being established in divine consciousness or being established in the higher form of the mind. Aparigraha, non-acquisition of things or abstinence from receiving gifts. Okay, not receiving gifts from others. Aparigraha, the fifth and the last of the yamas, is non-possessiveness, also known as abstinence from greed. It is actually complete freedom from greed or greed. Actually, it is greed. You should not try to possess more than you minimally need. As Swami Satyananda Saraswati mentions in 4 chapters on freedom, this keeps the mind unoccupied and also he does not have to worry about anything because there is nothing there to be protected. When we become non-possessive or non-attached, we become impartial, and in that way the conditioned love, affection, compassion and so on becomes unconditional and not merely restricted to family, friends, relations, etc. Okay, now we have finished the yamas, the 5 virtues of yamas, we have seen it. Now we'll see about niyama. It's a discipline collectively. Again, these have 5 virtues, that is shaucha, santosha, tapaha, swadhyaya and ishvara pranidhana. Let's see one by one. Now what is shaucha? It is both external and internal cleanliness. Now the niyamas are the self-disciplinary activities or the qualities which are entirely devoted to helping the aspirant on their spiritual journey. They are also fixed rules one should follow in order to do the practices of meditation, that is dhyana, and to reach samadhi. Now let's say shaucha. Shaucha, that is cleanliness, is the first niyama. Not only external cleanliness like having a shower, brushing your teeth, etc., but purity of actions, purity of mind from evil and distracting unnecessary thoughts and from bad haunting memories. Cleanliness of the environment and of oneself is necessary for hygienic reasons, but the state of the environment also affects your mind. If it is clean and tidy, you will become more centered and will be able to concentrate properly. But if it is an unhygienic, messy or untidy environment, your mind may become disorganized. That is why it is better to tidy up your room in the morning. Such things seem trivial, but they help to keep the mind free of clutter and make it sharp and clear. Next, let's see about santosha. It is a contentment. It's a contentment or satisfaction is the second niyama. Santosha is being content with one's actions and with what one has, what one is, where one is, and with what one has done or what one is doing. It also means to be content about where one is, whether it is concerning time or space. We should not daydream about the future, nor should your mind linger in the past. Be content with where you are, or you will never be happy or feel true satisfaction. Also, santosha is being content with what one is. If you do not like being what you are, you won't find any happiness in life either. You have to be contented with what you do if you have done your best. So, be happy with whatever you have. Tapas. What is tapas? It's a austerity. Is to gain control over body, mind and sense organs. It is a third niyama is tapasya or austerity or moderation depending upon one's capacity. The main purpose of attaining tapasya is to be able to meditate properly. It creates a controlled mind which will not accept any interference from the body like I am thirsty or I want food or that hurts, etc. It also hardens the body so that these desires aren't too frequent. It strengthens the organs and makes them healthy in order not to experience painful distractions during meditation. Thus, it leads to pratyahara or abstraction of the senses. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned that there are three types of austerities, that is, austerity of the physical body, and the austerity of communication and speech. The last one is austerity of the mind. Next is Swadhyaya, that is study of scriptures. Swadhyaya is a fourth niyama which I have defined as study of the self in the introduction. It is usually defined as study of ancient spiritual scriptures, but one can read the scriptures and not understand or apply a single thing from them in our daily lives. Swa means self here, therefore Swadhyaya is actually the study of the self or self-analysis or introspection. One must be the drashta, the witness, the observer. The higher type of knowledge is actual experience, while the lower form is learning directly from books, and the even lower form is learning from books but not understanding a thing that one is reading. Through Swa Adhyaya, we can improve ourselves and guide ourselves on the right path to some extent without the help of the Guru. If you can see your life and observe it like a book, as in the yogic practice of Antar Mauna, we can observe Swadhyaya, one can observe and modify one's reactions. One can moderate one's negativity and improve one's way of perceiving things through observing the self. From another point of view, chanting the name of God in the form of Gayatri Mantra, the Om Mantra, or some other ritual mantras, or even your own initiation mantra helps to focus the mind, which helps in Swa Adhyaya. When one chants a mantra from the heart, one does not necessarily need to understand what one is chanting in order to experience spiritual upliftment. Last one, Ishvara Pranidhana, surrendering to God. Ishvara Pranidhana or complete self-surrender to God is the last and one of the hardest niyama. One gets to a stage on the spiritual journey when the Guru steps back and one cannot proceed without help and one becomes desperate. Such is the human mind that one can develop complete faith in God only when a desperate situation arises, where none but God, which can be Ishvara, Allah, Yesu, only can help. Whether you believe in God or not, people understand God in many different ways. Some do not even believe in the concept of God. Yet everyone who seeks spiritual guidance and evolution reaches this stage if they are sincere in their quest. As God is different to many people, we reach this stage through different means and situations. It is the time when one completely lets go of all ego and surrenders to destiny. Next one is asana. Posture should be steady and comfortable. There is a shloka also, Sthiram Sukham Asana. Asana is one of the most ancient yogic practices. It forms the base for almost all the other practices of yoga, namely pranayama, kriyas, meditation, bandhas and mudras, etc. It plays a very important role in yoga training from the beginning to the end. We can trace the origin of yoga asana to the prehistoric times of ancient India, namely the Indus Valley civilization. The archaeological findings at Mohenjo-daro shows deities seated in yogic posture. Today, asana are the most popular aspect of yoga. Some people even mistake that yoga means only asana. Obviously, this is a gross misconception about yoga. From the above aphorism of Patanjali, the two key characteristics of an asana should be stability and comfort. In practical terms, stability here signifies immobilization or stability of the body, and comfort denotes a harmonious, peaceful and serene mental state. Thus, the definition of asana brings out the essentially of it. Contrary to the common notion among people, asana is not only a practice involving the human body but also the human mind. The methodology or mechanism of asana given by Patanjali throws more light in this respect. Next, about pranayama. It's a breathing with rhythmic calms down the mind. Pranayama is a Sanskrit word meaning restrainment of the prana or the breath. It's a controlling. The word is composed of two Sanskrit words, that is prana, life force or vital energy. Particularly the breath, and the ayama is to suspend or to restrain. It is often translated as control of the life force. When used as a technical term in yoga, it is often translated more specifically as breath control. Pranayamas are of the primary importance in yoga. Some yogis feel that no other practice is necessary for attaining the purification of body and mind. Pranayama by itself is sufficiently capable of eradicating all toxins. Pranayama essentially constitute a conscious control of the breathing. In pranayama, the emphasis is on the development of kumbhaka, that is a temporary suspension of the breath or temporary retention of breath. More about pranayama we'll see in later classes. You'll understand better. Next is dharana. It is focusing on an object. For example, if the Omkara symbol is placed in front of you, you just have to focus. That will be a dharana. Next is dhyana. It is meditation, which consists of unbroken flow of thought towards the object of concentration. When I said for dharana, when you focus on Omkara symbol, that is called dharana. And when you close your eyes and when you start visualizing the Omkara symbol between your eyebrow center, that will become dhyana, meditation. And the last one is samadhi. When meditation becomes continuous and constant, the mind takes the form of the object of meditation itself. It is a bliss state, ecstasy or the supreme peace. That means, when I said when you visualize the Omkara symbol, that will become dhyana. But when you continue with the same symbol, that will become samadhi state, where no other thoughts are involved. You are thinking about only one object. that is called samadhi. It is the end state of yoga. Whatever you do, just asanas, mudra, bandha, pranayama, anything, our aim is to reach samadhi state, where our mind is completely filled with only one thought. Next is samyama. The combination of dharana, dhyana and samadhi, it will become samyama. Okay, dharana is focusing, dhyana is meditation, samadhi continuously when you focus on only on one object will become samadhi. Three combination will become samyama, where the you might be remembering the definition. Yoga is combination of individual soul with the universal soul, that will become a samyama. Thank you.